Hello, I'm Tony and this is The View from the Evening. Today we're going to be doing a response video and we're responding to KiraTV's The MMORPG genre is dead to me. I'm not going to be putting clips of Kira's video into my video. Go and watch it yourself on his channel. I'll put a link in the description below. It's a good video and he makes some really good points. One of those points he makes is a change in design philosophy from one that encourages social interaction to one designed around solo players. I started out as a CRPG player with Bard's Tale in 1988, mostly because there were no online games to play at that point. The first MMORPG I played was Ultima Online because I'd played the Ultima games and that was basically an online extension of those. I've not played as many MMOs as Kira has, but I've played some of the big ones. Big fan of WoW. I've played the Elder Scrolls Online for several years, and I also played Star Wars The Old Republic. I don't play any of them anymore for much the same reason that Kira states in his video. Now, I've never been the biggest group player. I'm happy to play in the groups, but I don't really like the pressure that being in a guild gives you, where you have to be somewhere at a certain time. I don't always want to play. I might not want to play on a Friday night. So I don't really enjoy the idea that I have to play a game. The game is a game. It's there to play when I feel like it. It's not a job. I don't enjoy it being a job. Now, it doesn't mean that I haven't been in groups. I have. In World of Warcraft, I was in a guild during Wrath of the Lich King, and I had a great time in the guild. We were doing Icecrown Citadel, just on normal. Through the guild, I also played Arena with a guildmate and had some of the best times I've ever had in a game. A 45-minute 2v2 arena fight, which we did win. So as a not particularly group-focused player, I do like the looking for group type thing that you get in various games. I also like the solo group content that I can do. So in ESO, for example, I can do various different group dungeons solo. In something like WoW, I can do prior expansion dungeons or 2 expansion ago raids. It's still a challenge as a solo player instead of being as a team of 20. I don't feel the pressure to play with other people. Of course, looking for groups, looking for raids have been great for me. Looking for raid in WoW allowed me to see raids in expansions where I wasn't playing in a guild. And I wasn't going to be able to experience the content of even like a normal raid. Of course, at the same time, as a solo player, I just accepted that I wasn't going to be doing the higher end content. I just couldn't. And I was okay with that. That's not a problem. Now, in my opinion, something like Ultima Online was not really designed to encourage grouping in the same way that World of Warcraft initially did when it was released. The game didn't really provide any circumstances where you needed to group up. World of Warcraft, for example, would have quests in all of the zones that required you to team up to defeat an elite. You definitely couldn't do it solo, or at least I never could. Not unless you massively overleveled the area. I don't remember that in Ultima Online. I might be forgetting it because it was a really long time ago. But I'm pretty sure I played that solo. The only time you really needed it, I think, was if you were trying to tame a dragon or a white worm, and they'd patched the trick where you could stand in a crater and just tame the dragon without being able to be hit. I think that's the only time you actually needed help. Otherwise, I soloed the game entirely. There was PvP, and it was full loot PvP. So you could help other people out if there was a person that you knew was particularly bad at attacking people for no reason, and you was on the right character, you could step in and help people out. There was no requirement. But what it did was create a world that you actually had to be in. You inhabited the world. If you wanted to go and tame a dragon, you went to the place where the dragons were. And if someone else knew that you were doing that, they'd go there too and they'd find you. There wasn't this idea of immediate access to content that you get now. So look at Lost Ark. You've got Chaos Dungeons, Abyssal Dungeons, Guardian Raids and a tower. This is all end game content, or end leveling content you could say, after leveling, because it's required for you to be able to upgrade your gear. This is where you get the upgrade materials from, and you can do all of those things by just standing in one town and just moving between different things that you click. There's no requirement to be in the world as such. There's obviously island events and Una's Quest where you do need to be in the world, and potentially where some groups can be formed, although to be fair, in Lost Ark it's normally just the Zerg. There is no real necessity to group. And of course, different channels that split the population up remove this idea of all being in the world together. In WoW now, do you really need help in the world to do anything? Obviously, like, kill the big elite enemy is something that you need help with for a world quest, but that's about it. You can kill a couple of elites at the same time. Before I stopped playing WoW in BFA, I don't think I ever needed to group outside of the town where I used looking for group or looking for raid, to do daily dungeons or to do the current raid once a week. So again, the idea of taking everyone out of a world they inhabit and making everything easy to access is something that people asked for. The majority of people asked for it in World of Warcraft. Lost Ark know that you don't want to just have to run and spend 2 or 3 minutes getting somewhere to be able to do the thing that you want to do. It's annoying, boring, and it's frustrating, and it just wastes your time. So of course you need to do that. But it does take away from the inhabiting the same world and those social interactions that Kira's talking about that would spontaneously happen because there was a need for them to happen. In many MMORPGs nowadays, that actual requirement for on the spur of the moment groups to be created has kind of been taken away. I think that's a large part of removing the social aspect. I said earlier about Ultima Online, in my opinion, was not really created for groups, but I remember a massive undead invasion in Ultima Online. The idea was, for several days, some of the big towns in the map would be inundated with undead, and they would just try and kill everything. And the storyline was that eventually one of the towns, I think it was Trinzic, was going to be taken over by the undead. But on my server, which I think it was Europa, I can't remember, but on that server, whichever one I was playing, we fought all of the invasions off as a community, because we were all in the world together. So we could all run to Trinzic, and every single person that wanted to defended with everyone else. And we won. We were a little bit pissed to find out after we won the last battle that the game had actually just assumed that we'd lost because the story had to happen. But that community feeling of us actually like fighting them all off, it's something I still remember now, and it was what, 20 odd years ago? That's the kind of group experience that Kira's talking about. It stays with you, it makes the game special, it makes your experience of the game special. Unfortunately, it does feel like some of that is being lost. Now, can you imagine that happening in Lost Ark? There'd be a bunch of channels where players are just asking to see which channel is the biggest invasion on, where can I get the most loot? And not everyone would be able to participate in that. You just can't do it. For one, the server will get full, and two, there'd be so many different channels. There'd be, 50, 60, 70 channels at least. So the population is split. So they control exactly how many people are available to fight. So it doesn't matter how big a community effort there is. It's going to be limited. It's a shame. Look at New World. It's not the best game in the world, obviously. It's got its flaws. I think everyone knows what they are. But it tried to make sure that everyone was in the world together. The fast travel expenses were ridiculous, to be honest. And it really discouraged the idea of staying in one place and just jumping around. It made people inhabit the world. Now the game was based around grouping, it was forcing grouping. Obviously it was PvP based initially in its development, and it changed somewhat late in the process to try and add PvE elements to it. But companies formed to fight for territories. Groups naturally formed in the open world. Even I joined some groups at time, and it encouraged that. There were areas that are elite areas that you cannot realistically fight your way through easily. Don't get me wrong, I run through them and I loot chests and I don't fight anyone. You can do, but the areas are meant for group content, and realistically if you want to fight your way through one, be in a group. It's fine. There's also a 2,000 player limit per server, so there's no channels that you get in Lost Ark, there's no layers, there's no different instances. So all of that is trying to promote this idea of a inhabited world where everyone is in it and you have to see people. And I did recognise names in chat. I did see people out and about in the world and go, oh yeah, I know them, I've heard them chatting. They've changed that now. Now fast travel cost is pretty small, it's minimal, it's not a concern. That was because of player pressure, because honestly other elements of the game, like the storage, the way the storage is done is stupid as far as I'm concerned. It's dumb. You have to jump around. You cannot keep everything in one location. There's no central bank. So you have to jump around. So fast travel is required. So they changed it. Now I would be really interested to see how that would have affected those social interactions. To see whether there was less social interaction or more. But of course there's no players playing it anyway. So who can tell? No matter how many mergers they do, there's still no players. I'm on 3 mergers and the only conversation is how dead the server is at the moment. So it hasn't worked for them. Perhaps people don't want to inhabit the world anymore. Perhaps that's not a draw for the majority of players that want to play these games, which is fine. Like Kira said in his video, the MMORPG genre is dead for him. It's not dead, it's just dead for him. Talking about his video, Kira makes a point about gearing systems, specifically in Lost Ark, but I think it translates to other games. His point there is that you get these quick improvements that are not significant, that do not translate to a major increase in power, and they are there as a gateway to the next level, to the next tier. Part of the problem of this process is that you don't get invested in either the process of getting better, the process of getting more powerful, or in the gear that you get. None of it's special. The gear in particular, you're going to throw it away at the next tier. So you work on it for however long and then you chuck it. I completely agree. And the fact that even improving your gear is RNG related is, I saw that was something that I was not going to enjoy. I played it for a few weeks and then I was done. My issue with the idea, which I don't know that Kira spoke about too much, is that gearing has become the focus of the game rather than the character itself. Now maybe this is just me. As I said, I come from CRPGs. I played games like Baldur's Gate, where the process of leveling your character was a large part of the game. It went along with the story. So it was slow. The improvements you got were generally meaningful. And you would want to plan your character out outside of the game. I would think about how I was going to improve my character, what I was going to do at the next level, what I was aiming for at the end of 3 levels. What did I want to do? I needed to think about it. You don't need to think about anything in Lost Ark really. Of course there's guides on the tripods and the gems and all of those things that you need to build. But that's at the end of the game. That's not during the game. Now, that leveling process, that process of improving your character, being invested in your character, is something that games rush you through. You need to get to the highest level so you can start the game. Before hitting the max in a particular skill or proficiency that you had, for example, something like taming in Ultima Online, that was a huge thing. That meant you could tame a dragon, or you had more chance at taming a dragon. That meant that something significant happened, and people screenshotted when they got to 100 skill level. Now, also in Ultima Online, I had a crafter and it could craft gear with RNG even back then, and you would hope you could get the best resistances on it, on specific gear. But that gear was nowhere near as important as maxing out your skills. It's nowhere near as good on my tamer as actually taming a dragon or a white worm. I was attached to my character. I was attached to the fantasy of that character because I'd grown them. I had improved them. I had invested time and energy and thought into that character. I was never attached to the gear. It's obviously great to get a good bit of gear, but I was never attached to gear. Even when it was named gear and it did convey a significant change to the way I played, I knew it was going to go at the end of the expansion, or at the next update, or at the next patch. All that gear eventually was going to be thrown away, and as later and later patches came in, how quickly that gear became irrelevant sped up. My decent epic gear was being replaced 2 levels in by green gear, or 1 level in by green gear. All catch up mechanics, all reasonable, but there's no investment. I felt no investment in the character in many of these games. I don't have investment in my character in Lost Ark. I do care about getting the right skills. I do care about putting the skill points in the appropriate place. But it's laid out for me. I get to choose which character I'm going to play, but it's kind of an already made character. This is how it's going to go. You can adjust bells and whistles at the end, but you don't really have much choice. I don't think any of that's a bad thing, per se. I think it's fine. I just don't think it conveys the RPG element of MMORPGs. They're more MMOGs. They're just games. There's no RP part. And I don't mean RP as in you dress up your character and you have elaborate scenarios where you have to speak a certain way. I don't mean RP like that. Role playing as in feeling like you are a character or feeling investment in a character. I feel like that might be gone. What compounds the problem is that you have content locked behind gear score. Not skill, not your own skill, not the skill of the character or the progression of the character, but purely gear score. It's not like, here's an area, it's really hard. If you are a super elite player, you probably might still be able to do it. No, you can't get there unless your gear scores a certain level. Of course, in Lost Ark, the leap in stats between different levels of gear kind of does that anyway, but I went to an island and I think the requirement was 460 and I was on 250 gear. And I completed a couple of quests. It wasn't easy and I ran around a lot. But I did it. But most of the other content you can't. It just feels like your character's a mannequin that you put gear onto. The gear's the important thing, your character much less so. Another point Kira brings up is age. He's in his 30s, I'm late 40s. And maybe it's just nostalgia. Maybe it's the fact that you're trying to recapture something that you had 20, 30 years ago, and you just can't do it. Now, I would say, yes, there's some of that. There is the inability to recapture nostalgia, that you do feel like something's missing. And it might be that initial joy at finding this world. But I think it's more than that. I think it's the ability to see through the sort of tricks and the mechanisms that games companies put into their games to keep you engaged, to keep you playing the game. Look at New World. It's got the expertise system for gear, which means when you get to top level, the highest level, you go out and you start picking up gear. But you don't just pick up gear. You can't just find something that's really good. No, it restricts you, it time gates you. And for me, it's really blatant. It time gates you, so you start at 500 expertise, and the next bit of kit you get can be 500 or up to 504 or something like that. The only way you can get 600 gear is to get gear that increases your expertise level for every weapon and every armor slot. Clearly that's just stopping you getting good weapons straight away. That's clearly just forcing people that don't have lots of gold to be able to buy stuff on the auction house to play the game for ages, for no reason. There's no purpose to restricting it in that way except to keep you playing. To me, that's obvious. Lost Ark, you see that there's so many different things to collect. You see the cards in there, and you see how gacha-like the card system's going to be. You need so many different cards, and you need so many versions of them to get the best results from having these cards. And of course, you're going to collect too many, you won't be able to hold them, so you probably need to buy storage. That seems very clear to me that they are pushing you into buying more storage. I played Path of Exile for a while, for about half a season or so, and the amount of objects you get and the amount of different currencies and different tokens that you get, you have to have extra storage. You have to buy extra storage. There's no way you can keep it all. You can't pass it off to another character, because post-season that character's inventory is not going to be accessible. That shared inventory is not shared between seasons. Now for me, I don't like restarting. I like building characters up and getting invested in characters. I don't want to throw them away, so Path of Exile wasn't quite for me. It's a great game, I just don't like the seasonality of it and the throwing away of characters. Much like I don't like the throwing away of gear. Now, I'm not saying every game does the same things, but it becomes very clear to me when a game is trying to force me into playing it more than I actually want to. Stuff like daily rewards. Now, I think I've covered everything extra that I wanted to say on top of Kira's excellent video, because basically I completely agree. I'm not playing any MMOs at the moment. I am tempted by Final Fantasy XIV, but I've got no money. So I could play A Realm Reborn for however long it takes and then still not be able to play the game. I know if I enjoyed it I'd want to pay, and I can't, so I'm not going to do it. But if you want my really sad boomer take on all of this, and this is something that I've realised, and I think Kira might be seeing too, is that games are meaningless. Progress in games, achievements in games, aren't achievements, really. They are pointless. We all know that, really. We know that deep down. Some of us, when we're having a bad time, we play these games, I certainly have, to get some feeling of accomplishment, to get some feeling of achievement in a game that I'm not getting in real life. That's a big draw. There's lots of things that I play. Many games give you that sense of achievement. Valheim, I'm playing at the moment, gives me the sense of achievement because I build something and I build it the way I want. It doesn't matter. It's not relevant. No one else is even going to see it. But it gives me that sense. But we all know that it's pointless. A good game hides that meaninglessness, hides the fact that it doesn't matter, and allows you to enjoy an experience. I played Divinity 2 and it was a great game, and I enjoyed creating my character. I enjoyed changing the characters, setting up their power set, deciding what I wanted to do with them, and playing through the story and achieving the final end of the story. It's a great game. If you haven't played it and you like RPGs, I do recommend it. Now the story and the process and the attachment to the characters hides, for me, the fact that it's pointless, and it gives me the same feeling that I would watching a film, but in a much more personal, satisfying way because I was so involved in it. I don't know what the story in Lost Ark is. I kind of do. Demons. That's what I know. New World, I think it's corruption and demons, which is completely different from Lost Ark. But I don't really know what story is. I don't know who the characters are mostly. There's a prince guy in Lost Ark, and there's a priest demon bloke. That's it. I'm not one to completely ignore the story. In Wrath of the Lich King, I knew what I was doing. I knew what was going on. I knew the people involved in the story. And I got invested in the story. And my character mattered in that story. A lot of the time I find that the ultimate pointlessness is exacerbated by the fact that they are making you do pointless things in pointless ways over and over again just to keep you playing. For me, that is the biggest reason why I'm agreeing with Kira and I'm not playing any MMOs at the moment. And this is the first time in my life that that is the case. I don't hold out much hope for getting an MMO that I actually want to play. They're not for me anymore. The games that are coming out now are for a bigger audience. They are not for people that came from CRPGs. Might just be me. I'm waiting for Baldur's Gate 3, if I'm honest. I'm looking forward to that. But what I really want, I don't think I'm going to get anymore. I don't think they can make those games and make them commercially viable. So I'm not blaming any of the game publishers. They've got to do what they've got to do. Lost Ark, I'm sure, is making crap tons of money. Just not from me. Thank you for listening. I'll see you soon. Goodbye.